House to Home, brought to you by Remax Diamond Realty.
Day, everybody. Welcome back to House to Home. I have two lovely ladies that join us here every single week, and they tell us everything that we need to know about real estate and property on Guam. Of course, Liz and Gina. Ladies, thanks so much for joining me again.
Thank you.
Now, we are talking tonight about a topic that some people know very, very well. Other people have no idea about. I am definitely in the latter group, but everybody's heard about. We're talking about escrow. So, first question is the most obvious. What is escrow?
Well, escrow companies are normally the neutral parties that handle the transaction when we're ready to close the transaction. There are three escrow companies on Guam: Title Guarantee, Security Title, and Pacific American Title. So normally a buyer would choose which escrow company to work with. But they're the neutral party that would collect all the monies, and then they would disperse it at the end. They would charge, of course, documentation fees. There are certain fees that are associated with the transaction.
And is something being held in escrow, is that the result of maybe like an internal family squabble or contention, or maybe like a older family member passing away and bequeathing property to a descendant or something like that?
I think sometimes when they use that terminology, what they're really talking about is having a third neutral person, or a neutral, like maybe an attorney. An attorney could be an escrow company for somebody in something in that case.
Almost like arbitration?
Yeah, more or less. It's just a neutral person that's there in the middle that is holding on to documents or funds until the two parties resolve their issue, and then that document gets recorded or gets passed on, or the monies are transferred. But when they're talking about it in that sense, that's really what they're referring to, a neutral person that is basically a middleman. The other important thing about escrow that I think is important to buyers, and that's why we really promote using an escrow company, is that before they actually close the transaction, what they're really there to do is to also look at the history of that property and what runs in terms of title, what's happened to the property. Are there any liens? Are there any easements or encumbrances that are running on that property that you can't see just by going to the property and looking at it? Can you see all these things? No, you can't. These are all documents that they research through the government of Guam and through the court that they could point out to the buyers. And some sellers don't even realize that they've got liens on the property from years on back. And so that's also really a very big important part of the escrow process, is that they can show that to the potential buyers.
So while Hollywood tends to paint, things being held in escrow as, as like I said, the result of maybe contention between family members, it's actually a beneficial way, just so you know exactly what you're getting for like a parcel of land. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. How many properties right now, or like how big is Guam's volume of business, for lack of a better term, about with escrow?
Actually, with all the transactions, most of the business will go through an escrow company. I really don't recommend that an individual, for example, if you were buying property, that you just deal directly with the owner, because the escrow company, like Gina said, would go through the process to see, is there any lien on the property, and is it free and clear? Because if you work directly with an owner and you bought it, and later you wanted to sell it, you find out it's not in your name, it belongs to somebody else other than the guy that took your money. So we've had people come to us to tell us those were the situations. So the escrow company makes sure that that title is clean and clear in order for you to pass on to your heirs, so that it does go in your name.
And you can get the proverbial rug pulled right from under your feet if you're not careful.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's the other important thing too, is if something like that does occur, the escrow companies, when you go through escrow, you have the ability to buy title insurance. If you're doing bank financing, it's a requirement. The bank does require you buy it. But what happens essentially, and you buy the policy, you pay for it one time, as long as you own the property and the title hasn't changed during your ownership. And what happens is, if something like that happens, they step in and they correct the issue if it was part of their coverage.
Okay.
Yeah, they actually hire attorneys. If there's an issue with the property, let's say there's a boundary dispute, or there's someone else claiming the property, the title company would hire an attorney to settle all of that and handle the cloud on the title. And that's where title insurance is so important, because you never know when that could happen. And we've had different cases that have cropped up that we never thought would happen, and luckily there was title insurance, and it handled the issue.
Indeed. Okay, so final question while we're talking about escrow. As realtors and real estate agents, where does your scope of responsibility end before you hand it off to an escrow company or, you know, to a attorney, like you said?
Pretty much we handle the documentation. We prepare the purchase offer, it gets accepted. We of course work with the banks to make sure they have all the documentation they need. We pretty much coordinate to make sure everything is in place, and then all that documentation of course goes to escrow. Escrow would handle the incoming of the receipts of the monies, and then they would handle the disbursement, making sure that all the payments of liens, all those items are satisfied in order to close escrow with a clean and clear title.
Now, I know your job has a lot of regulatory things and, you know, issues and a lot of paperwork, but you both make real estate sound so fun.
It is.
Actually.
We're passionate about it.
You're going to open it?
Hey, come and join
We're
us.
always
Okay,
looking
well,
for
to tell you what, I
good
shouldn't
people.
do that while we're on the air right now, you know, because I work for, you know, KUAM right now, but we'll definitely talk about that. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right, and stay tuned, and if I am back at the flip side of this commercial break, then you know I'm still here, but stay tuned, we're back right after this.